Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is John Carrington. I'm 47 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was a stable man living a stable life. Quiet. Predictable. Responsible. I married young, 30, to be exact, to a woman named Renee. Charming, sharp, magnetic in that way that could light up a dead room and make you forget your own name. 18 years of marriage. 18 years of shared dinners, photo albums, spontaneous getaways, half of which were her idea, the other half, hers too. I thought we were partners. I thought we were forever. Until the day I received a video message that detonated my world. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I just wrapped up a Zoom call with a major client when I noticed a missed call and a file attachment from Renee. The message was simple: thought you should hear it from me first. I opened the video. Renee stood in what looked like a luxury hotel suite, definitely not the modest apartment of her sister in Portland, where she claimed to be visiting. She held up a glass of champagne in one hand and adjusted a glittering bracelet on her wrist with the other. "You'll land on your feet, John." I did. She laughed. Not cruelly. Not even nervously. Just, freely. Like she'd never known the weight of obligation. Behind her, a man passed through the frame, shirtless, reaching for something on the minibar. I stared at the screen, still as stone. That bracelet? I hadn't bought it. That hotel? Never been there. That man? No idea. That smile? That smile was the last straw. She looked proud. Triumphant. Victorious. But what she didn't know, what she never imagined, was that I had been preparing for this exact moment for nearly a year. I'm not a fool. I've worked in IT infrastructure and digital security for 20 years. I see anomalies for a living, suspicious logins, odd financial patterns, little inconsistencies that most people miss. And for months, I'd seen those same patterns in my own home. She thought she was clever. She thought I was blind. But I'd noticed. The fabricated work trips. The questionable purchases. The sudden concern over our retirement liquidity. She thought she was playing chess with a man who only played checkers. But I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was the one holding the receipts. Let me rewind a bit. We weren't always like this. When we met, Renee was a pharmaceutical sales rep, intelligent, polished, persuasive. She could talk a cactus into growing fruit. Meanwhile, I was the quiet guy who made servers run smoother than a Swiss watch. She used to say we balanced each other out. You dream, she'd tell me. I live. It worked, for a while. We built a life. A big house in Meridian. 2 dogs. Wine tastings on the weekends. I handled the money. She handled the sparkle. But then came the cracks. She started staying out later. Traveling more. Laughing less with me and more with people on her phone. I noticed a $4,200 charge at a jewelry store. She said it was for her mother's birthday. Funny, her mother never wore anything new. Then came the lies. Trips to Portland that turned into 2-day hotel stays. Credit card charges at bars in Seattle, not Portland. Outfits I'd never seen before and couldn't afford on our income unless she was dipping into our savings. And then, one night, she asked casually. "Hey, how easy would it be to pull some money from our retirement accounts if we needed it fast?" That's when I knew. Not suspected, knew. So I did what any careful man does. I stopped reacting, and I started documenting. For months before that video, I'd already opened a new LLC and legally restructured our finances. On paper, the main retirement account was still in both our names. But most of our actual wealth, stocks, bonds, even the emergency fund, had been migrated to business-tied accounts that only I could access. She'd signed the documents. She never read them. And I never corrected her. For a woman who lived off instinct and charisma, she had no patience for paperwork. That would be her downfall. And now, as I stared at the final frame of her video, her lips curved in a satisfied smirk, I simply whispered back to the screen. Wise decision. Because this was the part of the game she didn't know I'd been playing. Later that night, I unlocked a drawer in my office. Inside were 3 folders, one for the bank, one for the lawyer, one for the accountant. Renee thought she had drained our future. She didn't realize that what she took was only the surface. The real money? Locked tight. I looked around our house, the kitchen she'd remodeled to look good on Instagram but never cooked in. The art she chose because it impressed guests. The furniture that didn't feel like mine anymore. This wasn't my home. It was her stage. And she just walked off it thinking she won the show. But the real show? That was about to begin. And I held the script. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken. Not even because I missed her. No, I didn't sleep because the silence was finally honest. For the first time in years, there were no lies in the walls, no false laughter echoing from the kitchen, no staged affection in the air. Just me, and the quiet realization that the woman I loved had become a stranger long before she ever walked out the door. But knowing the truth doesn't make it easier to swallow. It just makes the betrayal more vivid. The next morning, I called my bank. "Mr. Carrington, we were about to contact you," said the rep from the fraud department. "There's been a large and unusual transaction request flagged on your joint retirement account." "I'm aware," I said. "My wife attempted to liquidate it without my consent. I gave them everything they needed, documentation, signed copies, even a forensic signature sample proving I hadn't signed the transfer forms. We'll freeze the account immediately," they assured me. "This will trigger a formal fraud investigation." I hung up, hands steady, heart numb. The woman I shared my bed with for nearly 2 decades had tried to rob me blind and laugh about it with her lover in a hotel suite. And somehow, I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was how empty I felt, not angry, not devastated, just hollow, like someone had scooped out the center of me and left the shell standing. Later that day, I walked through the house like a stranger. Every corner of it was decorated by Renee, her tastes, her ideas, her statements. The art? Abstract nonsense that matched nothing but her Pinterest boards. The books on the shelves? All unread. Just aesthetic props. Even the coffee machine in the kitchen, she had picked it, but I was the only one who used it. It hit me all at once. This entire place was a stage. A facade we kept up for neighbors, friends, holiday cards. I wasn't building a life. I was financing her fantasy. And when I could no longer fund the thrill, she moved on to someone else who could. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because I couldn't sleep in the master bed, but because I refused to inhale the perfume she used to spray on the pillows before leaving for her conferences. 3 days after the video, the text started coming in. "Renee, why can't I access the account?" "Renee, the bank says it's under investigation." "Renee, you need to fix this, John. Now." I didn't reply. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, just like we'd discussed. The more she panicked, the more evidence I gathered. Then, at 7 a.m. on a Friday, she showed up at my front door. No makeup. Wrinkled blouse. Hair barely brushed. The woman from the video? Gone. "What did you do?" she hissed, pushing her way inside. I didn't even flinch. "I reported fraud," I said flatly. "They froze the account." "You can't do that. I'm your wife. I have rights. Withdrawals over $10,000 require dual authorization." You forged my signature, Renee. She blinked. Her mouth opened, then shut. You can't prove. The bank has the forms. I have your video, remember? The one where you bragged about draining the retirement account. Her face shifted. She wasn't angry anymore. She was calculating. Listen, maybe we both made mistakes, she said, her tone softening. She reached out to touch my arm. We can fix this. You're overreacting. I didn't mean to hurt you. I filed for divorce. The papers are being served today. This conversation is now through our lawyers. The mask dropped entirely. You ungrateful bastard, she spat. You'd be nothing without me. I gave your boring life some spark. You think your little business would have grown without my network? I almost laughed. She had no idea what was coming. And yet, I said calmly, somehow, this boring man managed to protect our entire fortune while you were busy buying champagne and bracelets for your boyfriend. Her eyes widened. What? You drained the joint account, Renee. Not the trust funds. Not the brokerage accounts. Not the LLC investments you signed away without reading. What you stole. That was crumbs. She froze. You're lying, she whispered, stepping toward her phone. I'm going to check. I didn't stop her. I wanted her to see it. She opened the app. Typed in the password. Scrolled. Scrolled again. Where is it? Her mouth trembled. Gone, I said. Moved. Secured. Untouchable. She looked at me like I'd shot her. You planned this. No. I protected myself when I realized you were planning something worse. You think you've won? She barked. James has money. He has connections. Then you've landed on your feet, I said, echoing her own words. Just not with our money. She stood there for a long moment, shaking, seething. Then she screamed and threw her phone at the wall. It bounced harmlessly off the bookshelf and fell to the floor. When she left, I changed the locks that same afternoon. And when she tried to call again, I didn't answer. Because the man she thought was predictable, passive, and powerless was about to become her worst nightmare. And she had no idea the depth of what I was willing to do next. It's a strange feeling, sitting in your own home while someone tries to steal your life from under you. Even stranger when you realize it wasn't just one person doing it, but two. That's when this stopped being a story about heartbreak, and became a story about predators. After Renee's meltdown in my living room, I did what I'd been preparing for since the first credit card slip-up. I called Jack Reardon. Jack was a forensic accountant I'd worked with 2 years ago when a tech startup tried to launder funds through fake vendor invoices. The man had uncovered a 7-figure embezzlement scheme in 3 days flat. Quiet. Lethal. Discreet. I told him everything. I need the full trail, I said. Bank transfers, purchases, third-party accounts. Especially anything tied to the man she's seeing. Jack didn't blink. Give me 72 hours. By day 3, I was in his downtown Boise office. Jack slid a folder across the desk without fanfare. She's been siphoning funds for almost a year. Small withdrawals at first. Always just under the daily alert threshold. Then larger transfers. Total so far, $87,000. He flipped open the folder. Spreadsheets. Statement screenshots. Transfer logs. Hidden PayPal activity. Designer store receipts. $20,000 of it went straight to a personal checking account at Northwest Federal. I raised an eyebrow. Whose account? James Whitaker. 41, Regional Sales Director at Vox and Audio. Never married. Known for patterns. Jack tapped the folder. He has a history of relationships with married women. two that I could verify were eerily similar. In both cases, he was the other man, both women financially stable, both eventually divorced, and both left with massive financial holes. One had to file for bankruptcy. My stomach turned. So Renee wasn't just cheating, I said slowly. She was being targeted. Jack nodded. I'd wager she thought she was running the show. But based on the wire instructions and forged paperwork, Whitaker was clearly coaching her. The man knows how to fly under radar. But not mine. That changed everything. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about a con. A long one. One I was supposed to fund while watching my life fall apart in silence. Not anymore. Jack's last page showed something I hadn't expected, an email trail between Renee and a Voxen audio domain. Conference invites. Meeting confirmations. Flirty exchanges. The kicker. The first transfer from our account to Whitaker's came 3 months after Voxen partnered with the pharmaceutical firm Renee worked for. This was planned. He didn't just seduce her. He targeted her through her job. Like he'd done before. Suddenly, every late-night meeting, every girls' weekend, every sudden wardrobe upgrade made sinister sense. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overthinking. I was being groomed to be robbed. And Renee was either too blind to see it, or worse, willfully complicit. I took the evidence to my lawyer the next morning. Daniel Green was the kind of attorney who didn't waste time or pleasantries. As he reviewed the documents, his eyebrows rose. "We have more than enough to destroy her claims in court," he said. "And if you're willing, we may be able to take this even further." He leaned forward. "You want revenge, John? Or you want to end this man's entire playbook?" I took a deep breath. This was it. The real decision point. This wasn't just about my money or my pride anymore. This was about every other man, or woman, he'd done this to before. And every future target he might go after. "I want to bury him," I said. Daniel grinned. "Then let's start digging." By the end of the week, I'd greenlit a full legal strategy. We'd initiate civil litigation, press fraud charges if necessary, and, quietly, loop in Voxen Audio's internal compliance team with an anonymous report. But before we moved, I had one more task. I needed to look Renee in the eyes one last time. She'd texted me again. This time, the tone was different. "John, we need to talk. Please. There are things you don't know. James isn't who I thought he was." I didn't respond. Instead, I showed up at her new apartment, knocked once, and waited. She opened the door. Her mascara was smudged. Her hair wasn't done. The diamond bracelet was gone. "John. I know everything," I said. "The transfers. The coaching. The other women. The bank accounts. The scam." Her face crumpled. "I didn't know," he said. "He told me it was safe, that it was just a reallocation, that." I held up a hand. "I'm not here to listen. I'm here to warn you. I'm giving you one chance, to cooperate. Tell your lawyer to stand down. Hand over everything. Or the criminal charges stick. And James?" I leaned in. "He's done." She didn't speak. But the fear in her eyes said everything. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was about justice. It was about stopping a man who thought he could hide behind charm and plausible deniability. It was about reclaiming everything that had been stolen, not just the money, but my dignity. And I was only getting started. They thought I would collapse. That I'd just mourn the betrayal, maybe drink too much, cry it out, and move on. What they didn't know is that I'd already spent months preparing for this moment. This wasn't just about saving my money or protecting myself anymore. It was about dismantling everything they had built on lies, and turning the entire scheme back on them. The day after confronting Renee, I met with Daniel and Jack in a private boardroom overlooking downtown Boise. I laid out my goal in one sentence. I want to ruin them, but legally. With facts. With evidence. With no room to squirm. Daniel smiled. Jack nodded. Then let's coordinate the strike, Daniel said. Phase 1, Civil Litigation Setup. We initiated a full forensic summary of every dollar Renee had moved, every unauthorized withdrawal, every forged signature, every fake document. Jack provided a comprehensive report, time-stamped, cross-referenced, and bulletproof. Daniel took that and crafted the backbone of our divorce filing. Marital asset misappropriation. Financial fraud and forgery. Transfer of joint property to a third-party male with a documented predatory history. He also filed a petition to freeze all joint accounts and credit lines, ensuring that nothing else could disappear while we built the case. Phase 2, Corporate Strike. Jack drafted an anonymous dossier, meticulously composed, with all his evidence linking James Whitaker to predatory financial behavior with married women in professional partnerships. We sent the report to Vox and Audio's Corporate Compliance Division, marked confidential and time-sensitive. The timing was strategic. It landed 2 days before Voxen's quarterly shareholder meeting. Corporate execs don't like scandals, especially ones that make the company look like it enables serial predators on their payroll. Phase 3, Legal Bait. Here's where it got cold. We baited James. Daniel crafted a mock settlement proposal that we deliberately leaked through Renee's legal team. It implied I'd be willing to walk away quietly with minimal court involvement if James paid me $100,000 directly in exchange for my silence. It was a decoy, never intended to go through. But what we were looking for? Wire transfer intent. Why? Because if James so much as offered hush money or agreed to an illegal settlement, it became a whole new class of charge, attempted obstruction and financial coercion. While this played out, Renee's behavior began to shift rapidly. One day she was threatening lawsuits. The next she was emailing me lines like, "I don't think I even know who he is anymore. I'm sorry for everything." The manipulation was predictable. She was losing control, and she knew it. But it was too late for apologies. She wasn't just a victim. She was a collaborator. And now, whether she liked it or not, her survival depended on helping us destroy James. Then the breakthrough came. One of Whitaker's previous victims, Tracy, agreed to go on the record. She had been through the exact same pattern. He'd met her through her company, courted her while she was still married, convinced her to reallocate her joint assets into investments, and vanished after their divorce was finalized. She was now rebuilding her life from scratch. Tracy gave us emails, screenshots, financial records, and even a copy of a prenup she was forced to sign that gave James access to her private accounts. She wasn't just a corroborating witness. She was the mirror to my story. And with her on board, we had a pattern of behavior that crossed state lines. The next day, Daniel made a quiet call to a friend at the district attorney's office. No press. No noise. Just a heads up, we have a guy targeting women for financial exploitation. Multiple states. Multiple victims. Documentation ready. Are you interested? The DA's answer. Hell yes. Back at home, I began preparing for the final phase. I cleared my home of anything sentimental. Changed all the passwords. Secured the hard drives. Set up new layers of encryption. Anything Renee could try to weaponize, I'd already sealed off. I wasn't just playing defense anymore. I was building a fortress. And outside, they were dancing barefoot in a minefield. Then, right on cue, Whitaker took the bait. He emailed through a dummy legal account using a burner domain, "If John agrees to drop any court action involving Renee, we're open to a private settlement arrangement." Daniel grinned when he read it. Got him. That was all we needed. We'd lured a financial predator into attempted hush money negotiation, with documented wire fraud history behind him. It was no longer just a civil case. It was a criminal investigation in waiting. That night, as I stood on my balcony, watching the sun go down, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. Not vengeance. Not bitterness. Just quiet, calculated power. This wasn't about destroying Renee and James. It was about exposing them, and leaving them nowhere to hide. Because now, the clock was ticking. And I was holding the detonator. The morning of the hearing, I shaved, pressed my best navy suit, and walked into the courthouse like a man who knew everything had already been won. Renee and James. They weren't prepared for what I brought with me. And when the gavel dropped, their house of lies began to fall, brick by smug, fraudulent brick. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, but packed. Not with spectators, this wasn't some headline-grabbing celebrity scandal, but with attorneys, clerks, and a few observers who could feel that something big was about to go down. I sat with Daniel, calm and silent, like a man sitting front row to a movie I'd already seen. Across the aisle sat Renee. She looked wrong. Not like the woman who'd once lit up dinner parties or flirted her way through five-star restaurants. No, today she looked shrunken. Fidgety. Like someone who finally realized she was in over her head. James Whittaker sat beside her, wearing a suit that looked expensive but didn't quite fit, physically or ethically. He kept his jaw clenched. Eyes forward. But his foot tapped constantly. He knew. He felt it coming. The judge was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 60s. Silver hair. Stern glasses. The kind of person who smelled lies like bloodhounds smell fear. She looked over the files Daniel had submitted. Before we begin, she said slowly, I want to acknowledge that the plaintiff has submitted additional documentation related to suspected financial misconduct and unauthorized asset transfers. Is that correct, Mr. Green? Daniel stood. Yes, Your Honor. We have evidence of forgery, fraud, and a long-standing pattern of third-party financial manipulation. He handed her the consolidated dossier, bank records, wire logs, screenshots of texts, Jack's forensic report, and sworn testimony from Whittaker's past victims. The judge flipped through the documents with surgical precision. Mr. Whittaker, she said finally, it appears you are not named as a defendant in this case, yet. However, given the nature of the evidence before me, I am referring your actions to the district attorney's office for further review. James blinked. Once. Then again. And then the blood drained from his face. Renee whispered something to him, but he didn't respond. He just stared at the judge as if she'd pulled a lever and dropped the floor out from beneath him. Because, in a way, she had. Daniel continued, presenting the core of our case. That Renee had funneled nearly $87,000 from our joint accounts to Whittaker, often in carefully concealed increments. That she forged my signature to attempt a complete liquidation of our retirement account. That she misrepresented the use of marital funds. That she had collaborated, or at minimum, been manipulated, into acting against our legal agreement. And the best part? The video. Renee's original, farewell, video, complete with her smug declaration and champagne toast. Daniel played it in full. The courtroom went dead silent, except for the audio of her voice, lilting and casual. You'll land on your feet, John. I did. The judge closed the file. Looked up. Her voice was razor-sharp. Mrs. Carrington, do you have anything to say in response? Renee stood, trembling. Her voice wavered. I didn't know James was doing this to others. I thought it was different. I made mistakes, yes, but I didn't. You participated in the concealment of assets, the judge cut in. You attempted to defraud a joint account. Whether you were manipulated or not, you will be held responsible. Her knees nearly buckled as she sat down. Whitaker whispered something in her ear. She shoved his hand off her arm. After a 10-minute recess, the judge returned with her ruling. All joint marital accounts are to remain frozen. Any accounts tied to Mr. Carrington's LLC are legally separate and off-limits. She turned to Renee. You are ordered to make restitution of $87,000 to the plaintiff. Furthermore, you will relinquish any claim to assets acquired during the Cloud Foundry contract period, as those funds were protected and legally distinct. Then she turned to James. Mr. Whitaker, your involvement is now a matter for the district attorney. However, based on the documentation submitted, I am issuing a temporary financial injunction barring you from managing or influencing any account tied to the defendant until further review. Boom. Like a guillotine. But the blade hadn't finished falling yet. As Renee stood to leave, barely able to look me in the eye, Daniel tapped his folder and leaned toward me. Want to file the separate fraud suit today? No, I said, standing calmly. Let's wait until Whitaker gets indicted. Let's make sure there's nowhere left for him to run. Outside the courthouse, the crisp Boise air hit my lungs like freedom. Not victory. Not revenge. Just freedom, from manipulation, from lies, from a woman who thought she could dance on my future and skip away unscathed. That dance was over. And I hadn't just pulled the plug on the music, I'd taken down the whole damn stage. I once thought the most brutal betrayal I'd ever face was watching my wife smile while draining our retirement for another man. I was wrong. The most brutal moment was seeing her beg to undo it all, when the trap she helped set had finally snapped shut. 3 days after the court hearing, I got the first text. John, we need to talk. Please. It's about James. It's urgent. I ignored it. Then came the second one. He lied to me about everything. He said he'd help me rebuild. I think I've made a terrible mistake. Still ignored it. But the third message? That one made me pause. He's done this before. To other women. I didn't believe it until now. He started draining my accounts too. Suddenly, the predator was turning on his partner. And Renee, who had once stood beside him in defiance, was now staring into the same abyss he'd lured her into helping dig. 2 days later, she showed up outside my office building. She looked pale. Hollow. The sparkle was gone. He lied to me, she said, walking beside me as I made my way to the parking garage. James has been stealing from me. The same way you said he stole from those other women. I didn't stop walking. That seems to be his pattern. I confronted him, she continued breathlessly. He got defensive. Said I was paranoid. Then I checked my brokerage account. He'd authorized a transfer using my login. I don't even remember giving him access. I turned to face her. You didn't give it to him. He took it. Because that's what he does. Her lip trembled. I thought he loved me. I tilted my head. You helped him try to ruin me, Renee. You looked into the eyes of a man who was gutting your husband's life, and you toasted him with champagne. She looked like she might cry. But I wasn't offering tissues. This wasn't a Hallmark redemption arc. This was real life, and she was just another Mark who thought she was special. I'll testify, she said softly. If you need me to. Against him. I crossed my arms. Why? Because he used me. Just like he used the others. And, maybe because you were right. About everything. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The reversal had already begun. Back at my lawyer's office, Daniel was waiting with an update. The DA is preparing a grand jury indictment against Whitaker. Renee's cooperation will expedite it. He leaned back in his chair, smirking. And get this, Vox and Audio put James on immediate unpaid leave. They've launched a full internal audit. If even one email confirms the abuse of professional relationships for personal gain, he's done. Good. But that wasn't even the twist. The real twist? Renee turned over a USB drive she found in one of James's briefcases. I think he was keeping records, she told us, nervous and trembling. Like, of everything. And she was right. Inside were folders upon folders of spreadsheets, emails, contact logs, and asset flow diagrams for multiple women across multiple years, each detailing their net worth, vulnerabilities, even psychological profiles. It was like a digital hunting manual. Daniel's jaw literally dropped. This is predatory intelligence. This is evidence of intent. Which meant Whitaker was no longer just a manipulator. He was about to become a prosecuted predator. The DA's office moved fast. Within a week, James was subpoenaed. By the end of the month, he was indicted on wire fraud, identity theft, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. 3 of his past victims agreed to testify. So did Renee. It was almost poetic. The woman who once tried to destroy me now standing in court to help destroy the man who manipulated her into it. Of course, I didn't trust her motives. She was doing it for herself. To avoid charges. To escape her own consequences. But in the end, I didn't care. She was just another pawn now. No more queen on the board. No more power. Just a piece, useful for what she could reveal. And as for James, his smirk vanished when he walked into that courtroom in cuffs. I watched from the gallery as he scanned the room, looking for Renee. She didn't even glance at him. The judge read the charges. Whitaker pleaded not guilty. But that didn't matter. Because this time, we had the blueprint of his entire game. He wasn't walking away. Not this time. Some endings come quietly, like a door gently closing. This one came like a steel gate slamming shut behind a man who thought he was untouchable. James Whitaker's trial lasted 2 weeks. The evidence? Overwhelming. 4 victims testified, including Renee. The jury took less than 4 hours to deliberate. The verdict? Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Financial exploitation. Conspiracy. He was sentenced to 17 years in federal prison, with no chance of parole for at least 12. When the sentence was read aloud, James didn't say a word. Didn't flinch. Didn't cry. He just sat there, like a blueprint that had finally collapsed under the weight of its own evil. And Renee? She didn't look at him once. She had traded her loyalty for leniency. The charges against her were dropped in exchange for full cooperation, but she still had to pay restitution. To me. $87,000, court ordered. Paid in monthly installments for the next 10 years. It wasn't about the money. It was about watching her repay every cent she tried to steal. I never took pleasure in her downfall. Not like I did with James. With Renee, it was different. More sobering. She wasn't a villain. She was weak. Vain. Easily swayed. And worst of all, entitled. But I didn't hate her. I just didn't care anymore. 6 months after the trial, I moved out of the house we once shared. It never really felt like mine. Just a monument to her curated life. I bought a penthouse downtown, sleek, minimal, filled only with things I chose. Real wood. Warm light. Heavy silence. My space. My rules. My peace. My consulting firm expanded. Ironically, during the chaos of my divorce, I landed the biggest client of my career, an aerospace contract that secured my future twice over. I'd been forced to burn my old life to the ground. But in the ashes, I built something better. One night, as the city lights shimmered outside my window, I got a message from Andrea. She was a project manager I'd met through a professional workshop months earlier. Sharp mind. No pretenses. No games. Still on for dinner? Looking forward to it, I replied. I paused in front of the hallway mirror before leaving. Not to admire myself, but to look directly into the eyes of the man who had once been deceived, and refused to stay broken. As I grabbed my coat, I noticed something on the bookshelf. A single photograph. Renee and I on our honeymoon, smiling on the edge of some sunlit dock. I kept it, not out of regret or nostalgia. Just as a reminder. That trust, once broken, should never be handed out again like candy to those who smile pretty. That peace isn't given, it's earned, rebuilt from the ground up. And that monsters don't always hide under the bed. Sometimes, they wear expensive suits, and call you, darling. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.